And it looks like, yes, I'm now streaming on YouTube and IGTV. I apologize to the folks in IGTV. I have a camera mount that seems to be having some motion issues. Not sure why. It looks like it's jiggling a little bit though. So I'm sorry if the stability of that camera is not providing you the most easy to watch view right now. Let me just shift myself. I've gotten a poor seat on my pillows here. And it seems like every time I bump this work table, my Instagram camera jiggles a little bit. I gotta work on that. So anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to Thursday live studio stream at La Bricoleuse. I'm Rachel Pollock. I write the blog. I curate the Instagram and Facebook pages, and I create the content for the YouTube channel. So I also teach in the Department of Dramatic Art in the Costume Production Master's Program at UNC-Chapel Hill. So I do want to say that one thing that we're starting out with today, this week's stream is going to end 15 minutes earlier than usual. Normally I stream from 3 to 4 p.m. every Thursday afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. But this week I've had a conflict come up that I need to end the stream early so that I can go take care of it. You may recall, if you have attended or watched the videos of past streams, I've talked about it before, that I am one of 3 co-authors of a forthcoming textbook in tandem with the head of my the head of the graduate program in which I teach, and her husband, who is a journalist. And that book is coming out with a press called Taylor and Francis, and we have completed the first draft, turned it into the publisher. They're in the process of offering or compiling what feedback we will get and setting it up for their production. But we also, so it is essentially a history of the costume making industry in the 20th century, and limited to the production that was happening in New York City at the time, throughout the 20th century. Not just Broadway musicals and plays and spectacular revues like the Ziegfeld Follies, but also opera and ballet of that sort of like pinnacle class. So what you're making is the really high-end, excellent costumes. And that industry really came about at the beginning of the 20th century. And so this book that I have co-authored is going to come out, I believe it's going to be in early 2022. But we're at the point in the publication process to where we've reached out to some of the descendants of the early professional costume makers in the teens and 20s and 1930s. And of course those people are all dead. It's 2020. And in some cases, their children are no longer around either. But their grandchildren and great-grandchildren are. And we've reached out to those families. And, oh, hey, Catnip Hats, Kim is in the Instagram following or watching live on IGTV. Good to see you. I'm just talking about the textbook that I have co-authored with my colleague and her husband on the history of the costume production industry in the 20th century. And the fact that I'm going to have to end this week's studio stream 15 minutes early because one of the descendants of one of the early shop, I don't know what you would even call them, like the founders of these shops, they usually go by the name of the person that started it. So like towards the end of the 20th century, I think the most famous one is Barbara Matera Limited, which is a costume production shop that employed, 50 or 60 people. and the business is named after its founder. So we're hearing from the descendants of some of those early founders who started their shops in the teens, 20s, and 30s. And these are grandchildren, so they don't have necessarily primary knowledge to be giving us feedback, but they do have some factual information. There's been, most of these women from the early era were Russian immigrants, often Russian Jewish immigrants, and the transliteration of their names from Cyrillic to the English letters has not necessarily been accurately done in these research articles from the 20s and 30s about these shops. So, up to now, I've written the draft just reading newspaper articles from the time period and magazine articles and correspondence and such. And so we have a lot of corrections coming back from not the proprietors themselves, but their descendants. And we got a substantial lot of feedback from one of the grandchildren of Barbara Karinska, who's a famous costume maker and designer. She designed a lot of stuff for Balanchine Ballet. A lot of her costume designs are still used by the New York City Ballet, rebuilt and sort of treated as museum pieces. They are as much a part of the tradition of the New York City Ballet's Nutcracker as the music and the choreography. So anyway, it's exciting to hear back from him. And the reason that I have to end the stream early is I have to prepare for this meeting that I'm having with my co-author about what he has gotten back to us and what we can incorporate at this stage of the game, because the book is well on its way to being published. Like he shared some things with us that like a recording of an interview, a radio interview that she gave, that if we'd had it 6 months ago, we could have incorporated elements of that into the chapter, but we're really to the point where it's more of a fact-checking sort of situation, and we can't add huge amounts of text because of that's where we're at in the process. So anyway, I need to have that meeting with her. So this stream is going to end at 4:45 or thereabouts. I've set an alarm on my watch to remind me so I don't just run over, since I tend to do that. But I'm very excited for today's studio stream because I'm going to be talking about, I've been working this week with a new to me millinery material that I'm very excited to share with those of you who are watching the streams on IGTV and YouTube. And that is bamboo felt. So I guess it's been a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago, I did a video. Well, I did some stuff talking on the stream about this hat behind me on my mannequin Mavis that's made out of a cotton felt, and talked about using that as a millinery material and the pros and cons of it in the stream, and really sort of I worked out my thoughts on it, and then I distilled those down into a short video where I got to talk about, in that video I talk about more concisely what is the difference between wool felt and cotton felt, and that was very successful and spurred a lot of exciting conversation in some of the millinery fora that I follow on Facebook. There are various groups for professional milliners, and that was very exciting. And there was a comment on that video that asked about it's not that cotton felt is not fine for making hats, but you don't use it in the same way that you use wool felt because it doesn't have the structural integrity. It doesn't have the thinner profile. This person had asked a question about other types of felt made from fibers that were not animal fibers, and that she is looking to do millinery. I believe that would be like vegan millinery, like no animal products are involved in the making of these hats. And she had been doing some experimentation with the synthetic felts that you can find in craft stores like Joann's fabrics and so forth. And that sort of felt is bright colors, inexpensive, not easily blockable, fairly stable. And I guess I hate to make a aesthetic judgment about it, but I feel like in most contexts it looks fairly cheap. And this person who commented on that video was looking for something that was maybe more sophisticated, in working with it, that you could achieve a more sophisticated look than you can when working with synthetic felts, but that would also not involve animal hair. So that got me to thinking, because I had seen on the website of Judith M. Millinery Supply, she sells 100% wool felt, flat felt yardage, but also a version of flat felt yardage that is primarily wool, but I think it's 20 to maybe 30% rayon fibers. And that I've bought a sample of that before, and it is exciting. It is kind of like it's like a tissue felt, or at least the sample that I got. It's very lightweight and very soft. You can do some really nice drapey things with it. It doesn't. You would have to size it, or at least the piece that I got, you would have to size it fairly substantially to get it to do these kinds of felt hat styles, which you can't. I'll have to move it into the view for Instagram. You can see it well on YouTube, but this 1940s reproduction hat style that I think this is my 5th one that I've made now. If you used the wool rayon blend to make this hat style, this brim would be super droopy. You know, right now I've got the back of the brim popped, and as it goes around, then it shifts. And that gives the brim this lovely stability. And I don't think you could do this hat with the wool rayon felt, but that person commenting and asking about luxurious non-animal felts for millinery got me interested in. Oh, I see Randy has joined on IGTV. Hi, Randy. He is the proprietor of an exciting business which I have promoted on this stream before, Seams and Laser Beams, that made that series of laser cut head size ovals that I will be using in my millinery patterning from here on out, and also some other sewing related exciting stuff. French curves in 1/4 inch thick acrylic so they don't break, because if you're doing a lot of pattern drafting, the skinny ones that you buy from drafting supply companies will crack in half on a regular basis. Super excited about that. I ordered one, but it's not here yet, or I'd be showing it to you. And also another thing that he just added, forgive me for just using this moment to promote your business, Randy, but I saw that you joined here, and that's, the digression I'm on right now. This is not sponsored by Seams and Laser Beams. I am just very excited about the products that he makes, and he just introduced one that is French curve for bodice arm size and hip curves that are at half scale. So if you teach pattern drafting on the half scale with one of those little dress forms, tabletop size dress forms, that is a super handy thing to have for drafting those patterns. So anyway, to get back to my focus for today's stream, bamboo felt, I found a vendor. I'm sure there are several, but I found someone on Etsy selling bamboo felt in an array of different colors, and I ordered a half a yard each of purple and black. I ordered the black because I wanted to compare it to the black for felt that I have. So this, if you were here for this fur felt ornament making in the last stream where I made a whole range of different feathers, which I have some of those here. I made a range of different size and styles of feathers out of felt. And I also did these fun little sort of loopy tassels. Well, they're tassels if you hold them like this, and then they're kind of floral if you upend them. And this tassel here is made out of black wool felt. So when you look at the stiffness and drapiness, the texture of this felt, this is what it looks like when it's wool felt. And then with my bamboo felt, I made a really big one because I was, if you recall, this black felt version of the 1940s hat, I had created this fun wool felt hair-like decor that was inspired by Kim. And in her project several years ago, she had trimmed a hat with some of this loops of fur felt coming out like hair, and I really loved that effect. So now I have this sort of Batman hat with Joker hair. It's kind of, my partner said that, and now I can't get it out of my head, even though that was not my original intent. And I wanted to replicate that type of ornament with the bamboo felt. And I wish you could touch this. I wish that you could share sensory information through a stream, because this bamboo felt, I mean, the fur felt is of course quite luxurious, and it has a nice feel to it. And you know, you want to rub your face on it because it's kind of reminiscent of bunnies or whatever. The bamboo felt, it is so soft, but not droopy. So this purple hat here that Zelda is wearing is my 1940s Hat Reproduction Pattern that I love so much, made up in bamboo felt. And this one, contrary to the other 4 that I've made, I didn't size this one at all. This one has no stiffening in the felt. And yet it maintains this lovely stability that, you know, I've got the back popped and my brim is just retaining its structure much better than in the wool felt or in the fur felt without sizing. And I'm not sure, when they make the bamboo felt, I haven't had a chance to research how that gets made, because it consistently, you know, every piece of it that I have worked with, which I have the purple and the black, but they also sent me some samples of a couple of other colors, which this yellow is a piece that came with it. And, you know, you can, if you look at the cross section of this, you know, that's very thin, a sort of a tissue felt thickness, but it has a crispness to it. And yet, it doesn't look cheap when you make something up with it. You know, I think if this hat, well, this color is very unsophisticated, which is why I'm thinking of filming another video that's a short, condensed comparison between wool felt and bamboo felt. And I'm keeping this yellow one so that I can illustrate that, contrary to that cotton felt stuff, this has great structural integrity. I cannot tear this stuff, which I guess if you know anything about bamboo and bamboo fibers, is very sturdy fiber. So I guess that's not surprising. But it's surprising. It's surprising to me. I would think I would at least be able to jam my fingernail through this, given that it's not felted animal fur. But anyway, it's inexpensive. Relatively. Like, I think I bought a half a yard and I want to say it was about $12. Here, if you can see, this is a little scrap of a sort of wine-colored burgundy bamboo felt. And this is here because this is what I did a burn test on to check and see. I couldn't believe that something that was not had no animal fiber content whatsoever. I could not believe that it would feel so soft and have such structural integrity. So I cut off a little piece and did a burn test. And sure enough, it behaved like a cellulose fiber. It behaved like a plant fiber. When you burn a plant fiber like cotton or bamboo or linen, rayon, which is a synthetic fiber that is actually extruded from cellulose, so it behaves like a plant fiber because that's what the base material that it is spun from is created of. It smells like burning paper or like campfire smoke when you burn it. And sure enough, when I burned this little scrap of bamboo felt that they sent me as a sample of other colors, it burned just like every other cellulose fiber burns. So let me show you what I did with the rest of that piece of burgundy. Last week we were making these fun feather ornaments for millinery trims out of wool felt and boiled wool, which is basically woven, but then it's felted, so it has it looks like felt, but if you really dig down in there, you can find the structure of the weave. And I did a couple of felt feathers out of that type of wool, felted boiled wool. And then I did some out of synthetic, which is what this light gray one here is. This is, and notice how it is, it's sort of messy. It doesn't have the structural stability that a wool felt feather has. I have some wool felt feathers here as well. So if you compare this dark gray feather, which maintains its uniformity really in the fronds that I've cut into it. My lighting sucks today. I'm so sorry for that. Whereas this gray synthetic feather is more bedraggled. And, you know, because I'm a theatrical milliner, this has a certain excellent place in the work that I do. If I'm making a hat for a character who would be bedraggled, then this is great because it's sort of a controlled sadness that the feather has. That's me talking like a designer. The structural integrity of the synthetic felt fronds, not good. Whereas the structural integrity of the wool felt fronds is quite nice and maintains order, as opposed to the synthetic felt, which has a sort of a chaotic look to it. And I wanted to see, in working with this bamboo felt, what my felt feather looked like with it. And it is, it has even more structural stability than the wool felt does. You know, I cut this one with uneven fronds so that it's got a sort of a stylized feather look, as opposed to a really fringed out feather. So it does have some stability just naturally because some of the elements that are clipped into it are just thicker. But if we compare, I made some more purple ones as well. If we compare like this purple one out of the bamboo felt, that I really clipped this one, you know, all of these fronds are about a thick 1/8 of an inch wide. And yet it still wants to basically stay feather shaped. It doesn't get that messy hairstyle look that the synthetic felt feather just immediately got. As soon as I was done clipping it, put it down, it just wanted to be messy, which, like I said, again, you know, theatrical millinery, you want something to be, sometimes you want something to have that aesthetic look to it. And I guess maybe in a streetwear contemporary fashion context, you know, there was that whole trend for like shabby chic and stuff that looks like distressed jeans that have holes in them and so forth. I can imagine even a contemporary fashion circumstance where you want that look of the synthetic gray feather. But the point is, in looking at the bamboo felt and possibilities for millinery, and specifically in this case, possibilities for felt trims for millinery, the bamboo felt just has a very crisp and orderly look to it. And I did hit this one with some steam to make it want to stay open, which is interesting to compare to this wool one, which I also hit with some steam to make it stay open, but it wants to close back up, and twist a little bit, and I don't get any twist in any of these bamboo felt feathers that I've done. I think this one is my favorite. I like the way that I clipped the irregular flues into this one the best. And I can definitely imagine lots of theatrical applications for bamboo felt feathers, particularly thinking about feathered headdresses in specifically children's theater. I've made several of those for various reasons. And there's a quality to the feathers that are made from this bamboo felt that is, it looks like an illustration. I don't want to say it's cartoonish because it's not comedic necessarily, but it's very stylized. And sometimes that is an aesthetic that you see happening in children's theater, or stories that are told for the stage that began as children's theater. Like, for example, there was a Broadway show, Peter and the Starcatcher, that is sort of based on Peter Pan, except it's really geared towards adults, except kids would have fun watching it. But and it exists on two levels. And I love doing that kind of theater where children enjoy it, fully and completely. There's nothing going over their heads per se, but that adults enjoy it on a different level, because some of the jokes or the dialogue has dual meaning or double entendre that the adults pick up on that children are just too young to get it. Now I've really digressed, but I was still talking about bamboo felt, which is really kind of my intended focus of the whole stream today, particularly since I need to leave early because of my consultation on the textbook, which is coming out, which, by the way, we finally have a title for that book. That is the history that I'm co-authoring with the head of my program and her husband of the costume production industry, primarily in and around New York City throughout the 20th century. We had a real struggle at the beginning of this pandemic situation because, it was over last winter break that we were really pushing hard to finish all of our different responsibilities. You have an outline of a nonfiction book, and we divided up the chapters of, these are Gregory's responsibility, these are Triven's responsibility, and then there's the list of ones that were my responsibility. We were all pushing hard to get our chapters done, and oh, hey, Christina has just joined from Barcelona. It's great to see you in Instagram TV. And I'm running my mouth about this book that's coming out that I'm one of the co-authors on. So I'm saying that we have finally come up with a title for it because we struggled when we finished the draft, and then the pandemic happened, and then the costume industry completely went on pause indefinitely. And we were like, crap, do we have to write a whole new chapter to the end of this book because this is epic? And ultimately we were like, no, it can just be 20th century. The pandemic is solidly 21st century, and that can be that's its own whole research project and book manuscript that somebody, perhaps one of you, will write, perhaps us, who knows what the future will bring. But we were like, we don't need to, we will stop it before that happens, and maybe in the foreword or the afterword make reference to it as something that hit in the midst of the finishing of this book. But we had finished the draft, and we're just we're to the point where we need fact checkers and stuff to verify what we've written here. We can't write a whole new segment to the end of this book, a whole new chapter. So anyway, we finally come up with a title. I say we, I mean Triffin. She's the one that came up with it. We all contributed ideas for what it could be called. But really, she hit on the best one, and I think it's the one that the publisher is going to go with. And it is Creators of Character, A History of Costume Making in the 20th Century. Which is, as soon as she said it, well, she didn't say it out loud. She sent it to me in an email. But as soon as I read it, I was like, that is just so perfect, because as makers of costume, as interpreters of design renderings, you are creating the character in terms of you are providing that performer with a wardrobe for the person that they are playing. And Gregory interviewed so many actors, like surviving famous actors of the 20th century, like Chita Rivera and Nathan Lane, and all of them talked so eloquently about how their avenue into truly understanding their character was often through the costume. What the person is wearing gives them insight into who that person is and how they will portray them on stage. And I just love that the phrase creators of character pays tribute to that. But there's also a second meaning that all of the people that we profile are the makers. So like Barbara Matera and Ray Diffin and Helene Pons and Kiviet, and these are all people who are creators in and of themselves. And they are creators of character. You say someone is of character, they are someone you respect. They are someone whose work is respected. And I just loved the duality of that title that Triffin suggested. So that's going to be our primary title, with the secondary, Creators of Character, A History of the Costume Making Industry in the 20th Century, which it's not the whole costume making industry of the 20th century. It is really limited primarily to New York and the lineage of the high level the shops functioning at the like Broadway level and beyond. How those creators came about within that community. There's, there is loads to be written about. We don't even talk about the shops on the West Coast that cater to the beginnings of the film industry up to now. There's a whole a community of makers out there that another volume of this book series. I mean, we don't have plans to necessarily write more, but the publisher may decide to continue this with LA, London, Sydney, Australia. This is the first one, and maybe we won't write any more than this one, but hopefully other people will write more, because the histories of the makers are things that are... Sorry, my cat has come into the room. He has distracted me here. Riley, you can be on the stream if you want to. No, he's not interested. Anyway, I'm running my mouth on and on about this book, but because I'm about to have a meeting, I need to end my stream when my watch alarm goes off 15 minutes early from when I normally would, to have a hopefully final consultation about the edits in the most recent feedback email that we've gotten from one of the descendants of one of the makers that I was the one writing the profile chapter on her. I'm sure that they must have gotten feedback from people that feature into the chapters that Triffin and Gregory wrote. So far, the only other person that I have gotten notes from is one of the early costume makers. She was also a designer, but she pretty swiftly just sort of fell into making clothes for many other designers, and didn't really design so much herself as well. Was a woman named Helene Pons, and she was an immigrant from Ukraine, actually, I think. I'd have to look back at my notes because honestly, like I read about all these different women and they all came from, um, I think of them as countries that were part of the USSR because I grew up in the Cold War. And so when I was learning history classes and world geography, like the USSR was an entity that existed. It, Kamchatka was part of it, and Russia was part of it. And, you know, Ukraine, places that now exist as countries all on their own, they were just sort of like nation states within the USSR. And all of these women came from various countries in that part of the world, immigrated um, in most cases as a result of the Bolshevik Revolution, and in one case, fleeing anti Jewish pogroms. And, you know, Helene Pons, pretty sure she came from Ukraine, maybe. She stopped off in Paris first and married a Frenchman who coincidentally had been living in Russia, and he left also when the unrest of the revolution began. And they met. I guess I'm just going to tell you the story of Helene Pons. They met working for an avant-garde theater troupe in Paris that was comprised of Russian expatriates. And that theater group then went on tour of the rest of the world and wound up in New York City. And Helene and her husband George decided to open their own costume production business, which was originally called George and Helene Pons, but then he passed away. And anyway, Helene Pons Studio was one of the chapters that I wrote. And I really loved learning all about this woman who, you know, she did not have hardship as a child. Like her family was actually quite, I don't want to say royalty, I don't think, but, you know, they were well off. And, but then when the revolution came about, like they needed to get out of there. I think the father stayed. But anyway, the idea that she started out as in art school in Paris and learned a lot of handcrafts like leather working and French flower making, and wound up in New York City. So many of these women with this history of learning handcrafts, embroidery, crochet and knitting, and comes to New York. They all come to New York City there at the beginning of the 20th century and found these iconic early shops that you can then, in the book, you know, if you read the book, you can trace the legacy of like this person taught that person who opened their own shop, who taught this person who opened their own shop. So by the time you get to the 90s and you have like Barbara Matera's Limited, you can see what her costume family tree is going back to the beginning of the century. This is all. Helene Pons was the first person I wrote about that her daughter and granddaughter are both still alive, which is incredible in and of itself. The daughter must be, 70 years old herself by now. And they live in Italy. I believe they still live in Italy. They did, when I finished writing the chapter, they had moved to Italy. And that was the first group that I got fact check information back from, that I had to revise the chapter. And it wasn't revise hugely. It was just, little details that maybe the press of the 1930s got wrong, or because, that was my research articles that had been written in the paper in the 30s and 40s about these people that were now 10, 15, 20 years into their careers. And, they get the facts wrong. So I assume that they've got the facts right, write that, and then the granddaughter says, oh no, that was actually not a bathing suit scene. Those people were servants in the background and they were wearing loincloths as opposed to bathing suits. So, we just had to little rephrase things like that. And this, when I'm ending my stream early, it's the final round of stuff that we think we're going to get back before the deadline, because we have to turn in all of these edits that come from the descendants in terms of factual information that we may or may not have correct. We have a deadline of Monday on that. So, it's been really eye-opening in terms of thinking about reference books and how you assume that something that is published, that is a nonfiction book, has been fact-checked to within an inch of its life, and that it's published, so it must be true. But then finding out, like I said, we just received this audio file, this so generously shared with us by the grandson of one of the women that I have written about, that it'd be great to listen to that and incorporate that into the book, except I would have had to have it 6 months ago to do that, to incorporate it into the book. So it's something that hopefully, in some future iteration of somebody, reading this book and deciding to write a biography of that lady or whatever, maybe that if there is any information in it that would inform what I wrote, deadlines are deadlines, and we have to turn it in by Monday. So my throat's getting dry from talking so much. That's all just me running my mouth about the book that we're writing. I have one untrimmed felt scrap from the bamboo felt that I want to make into yet another felt feather. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with these felt feathers. I just sort of got on this kick of making all of these felt feather ornaments without really any earmarked purpose for them. I'm not creating a headdress of felt feathers for some character in a show at work. I'm creating them because they're fun to make, and I just, sometimes I just get really taken by something and make a bunch of them, and then if it's not for a show, then they just sort of go into stock at work, and maybe they get used someday, maybe they don't. But I thought I would trim this one up on the stream so that you could see texturally speaking. So I have stitched a channel. This does not have a wire or a cord in it. It's just a channel. And I stitched maybe larger than an eighth, maybe 3/16 away from the fold here. And this bamboo felt creates a lovely quill spine to these felt feathers that has more structural integrity than the wool ones or the synthetic ones, which of course you could size, you could add stiffener to any of these to give it more oomph. And certainly if you put a wire or a cord down that fold before you stitch it, you can get all kinds of stability out of that. But I'm really interested in this bamboo felt as a medium because it has such innate structural, not stiffness, it's, like I said, it's really soft, but it also has stability to it. And I don't think it has the sort of unsophistication, the sort of craftsy home glue and paper clips and seeds that craft felt of the synthetic variety has. Hello, Head Gem Memory, or Head Gem Millinery. Good to see you. I love seeing people's names that I know from Instagram and from YouTube, and also the rest of life showing up in the chat and saying hello. It's great to have you all here. You're coming in as I'm in the midst of making a felt feather, much like the felt feathers that I made all last week with wool felt and fur felt and synthetic felt. And this week, I have this new bamboo felt, which I got it from a dealer on Etsy, and they're based in Canada, the one that I bought from. I got the idea that perhaps they had sourced the felt from possibly China, just based on the graphics of the photographs that came along with it. It looked like the kind of product, wholesale product color range that you see from the vendors that are selling like trims by the yard and so forth, where they've clearly bought them from a Chinese distributor for wholesale and then are turning around and retailing them on Etsy. So if you're interested in experimenting with bamboo felt to make some millinery trims or some hats like this lovely reproduction felt hat in the same style that I have made 4 times otherwise, you can find it on Etsy. I'm sure there are other vendors elsewhere. And who knows? I know Judith M. watches my streams sometime after the fact. Maybe she'll start carrying it here in the U.S., Judith M. Millinery. Or maybe not. But, the one thing I have yet to try with this, which I had hoped that I would get to it, but then this whole book thing exploded. I hope that I would get to it today, but I haven't yet, is blocking. And whether I can get the bamboo felt to take a curve. Now it definitely, as I demonstrated earlier with this square of yellow bamboo felt, it definitely has the structural integrity to not rip apart the way that the cotton felt did. That's my timer going off. Which now I need it to stop irritating me. I need to wind up the stream because I have that meeting with my co-authors about the book. But just based on this one and this little sample that the bamboo felt dealer sent me as an example of other colors and so forth, I've gotten it to structurally deform by just pulling on it here. So, it's no longer a flat square. I could go iron it, I'm sure, and make it a flat square. But this bodes well to me for its ability to block over a curve. And I apologize for not getting to that for this stream because I'll get to it before I do the video for my channel. Because I have high hopes for its ability to take a pretty decent curve. What I would love to do next, I'll have to see if I have enough of either of the colors that I purchased half a yard of, which it's half a yard wide and 36 inches, or half an inch long, or half a yard long and 36 inches wide. So, you're getting a pretty substantial piece when you buy it, at least from the vendor that I found on Etsy. If you search bamboo felt yardage, you might find them. Or I can look it up after the stream and put it in the notes on this video when the stream collates into a video that shows up on my YouTube channel. I won't be able to do that on IGTV, but I'll post about it if I remember to, who that vendor is. Anyway, blockable? I think so, but I have no proof yet. I only have proof that this deforms into curvature when you stretch it and pull it, but it also does not rip. Wow, it really doesn't rip. That's so encouraging for the durability of the hat. And this is not 100% bamboo fiber. This is like 80% bamboo, 20% rayon, I think, which may explain those two fibers. I feel like I have knitted and crocheted with bamboo yarn. It's really, really soft. So that probably is something for that's helping out with the great texture that we have going on here. So I need to end the stream to prepare for my author meeting. Thank you so much for joining me this Thursday for live studio stream. I want to say, as of right now, I'm planning to stream next week. But you should know in advance, I won't be streaming the following 2 weeks. I think that's February 11th and 18th, because at the university that I teach at, we are beginning the process of interviewing applicants who hope to enter the program for fall 2021. And those 2 Thursdays, the 11th and the 18th, we have booked people that, of course, they're interviewing via Zoom, but it is still an all-day affair where they sit in on a class and they go on a Zoom lunch with our existing graduate students to ask questions without professors around. They present their portfolio and they have a little one-on-one time with all of the faculty. So I don't expect to be done with that in time to stream next week, or not next week. I will be here next week, but the 11th and the 18th. So those 2 weeks, not only will I have new video content on YouTube on Monday, but I will also upload another video on Thursday in place of a live stream. I'm finalizing this. I'm getting to the point where I can plan my YouTube schedule a month in advance at least, and it is my intent to finalize that schedule as to what that video content will be by Sunday, so that I can share it probably on Instagram and Facebook as a graphic that lists what those videos will be. And of course I will be streaming the first Thursday of February and the last Thursday of February, barring something coming up. You know, as of right now, we have scheduled most of what I think we have scheduled all of our interviews, but every year we have 1 or 2 people that contact us in February, and they're such a good candidate that we have to interview that we want to interview them. So it is possible that somebody who has not yet even applied will get in touch and submit an application, and they'll be so wonderful that we will want to interview them, and it'll preempt one of my other Thursday streams. There's a lot of moving parts with this, but I just want to throw it out there that, you know, this is the plan right now. Stream next Thursday, not the next or the next. But hopefully I will see you back here. It's great seeing so many. Trisha, I see Trisha is talking in the chat on Instagram. Trisha and Randy, it's good to see you guys. Heads Jim Millinery, Kim Fraser, Hat Nip Hats, Christina DePrada. It's great to see all you guys. Arlene's not here, or if she is, she's being unusually quiet. She'll probably watch. If she's not here, she'll watch the video afterwards. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to sign off the stream and see you next week.